business fast. A lot of times people think that in order to grow quickly, you have to work, hustle, work hard, and all this hustle culture is getting people really tired. And today I'm going to be sharing with you something that is really counterintuitive, and it's going to be contrary to popular belief, popular teaching. But in reality, I'm going to be pulling back the curtains to what many of the highest income earners and the most successful business owners understand, but is rarely talked about. I'm going to be revealing secrets that you usually only hear when you invest in high-level masterminds and you're around entrepreneurs that are doing 7-figure, 8-figure, 9 figures. And these are the conversations that they're having. And I'm going to be sharing with you what many of the top entrepreneurs are doing in order to grow and scale their business faster than anything else. And this is the power of leverage. Leverage is the key that unlocks the abundance and possibilities. And some of you will be like, well, what is leverage? I would say leverage is anything that multiplies the force or the power that you put in a minimum input and it creates a maximum output. And so it's a force multiplier. And when you look at force, what is force? Power. Force is power, force is might, force is strength. Whatever it is, it's effort, it's results. So you put minimum effort, you get maximum results. And no, that's not cheating. That's literally what all of the wealthy, without exception, wealth is created by leverage. And so an example of this in a practical sense, one of the first times I learned about leverage is when I was a mechanic working in a mechanic shop, and I remember trying to get these lug nuts off and this bolt was just not coming off. And I would pull and it was hard. And then the master mechanic was like, here. And he goes around the shop and he grabs this big old pipe and this big tube and he puts it on my ratchet and then he goes, now pull. And I'm like, okay. And so then I pull at the end, it goes pop, and it like slides like butter. And I'm like, wow, that was such a difference. What just happened? He's like, well, this is a principle of leverage, where the closer you are to your where your strength, it's going to be a lot harder. But the further that you are with having a longer pipe at the end as an extension of your tool, then it takes way less effort, much less strength, and much stronger force to get the result that I want, in this case popping off the bolts. So that was the first time I began to understand about leverage in a practical sense. But then it wasn't until I met my millionaire mentor, who used to be a mechanic and now he's a millionaire with an online business, that he was explaining to me leverage in a whole new way. And I'll never forget what he shared. And he was explaining how he's like, I want you to do this as I'm talking with you. So if you were to work 1 hour in a day, how many hours would you get paid for? And everybody can answer.
1 hour.
1 hour. But let's say that you decided that you're going to work 10 hours in a day. How many hours would you get paid for in that day?
10 hours.
10 hours. But what if you had 10 people working for you in that day? How many hours would you get paid for?
10.
You had 10 people who were each working 1 hour for you in that day. How many hours would you get paid for?
10.
10 hours. Not a trick question. So if you have 10 people working 1 hour for you, you get paid for 10 hours. Now, let's say you were working 25 hours in a day. How many hours would you get paid for?
20. If you're working 20 hours a day.
If you were working 25 hours in a day, how many hours? 25. That's what most people say, but that was a trick question because it's impossible. You can't work 25 hours in a day. There's only 24 hours in a day, 18 waking hours. But that doesn't stop many entrepreneurs from hustling and grinding and thinking that the secret to getting ahead and growing their business is working more hours, but that's not the case. You are limited. You yourself, as an entrepreneur, are limited to 24 hours in a day. But what if you had 25 people who were each working 1 hour in a day for you? How many hours would you get paid for?
How many people?
I want you to pay attention. What if you are each working 20, if you had 25 people each working 1 hour in a day, how many hours would you get paid for?
25.
25 hours. So you just took the impossible and now made it possible. Why? How? That is through the power of leverage. You are now leveraging other people's time, other people's knowledge, and other people's strength. That is a force multiplier. What we're looking, when we're dealing with time, and when we're dealing with leverage, we're dealing with multiplication. When we're dealing with your own strength, you might add, like I might add more force to get the bolts off, or I might add more hours to get to grow my business. But when I hire a team, when I outsource, when I invest in other people's time, then I'm buying my time back at a discount and I'm working on multiplication. Here's the difference between struggling entrepreneurs and successful entrepreneurs. Struggling entrepreneurs are working on a plan of addition. Successful entrepreneurs are working on the plan of multiplication through leveraging other people's resources. And this is the thing that he was explaining, that when you're choosing a business model, you want to choose a business model that has leverage baked in there. You want to choose a business model that has leverage as its very core. And I'm like, wow. Never really thought about that, because I remember, here's another thing. If you don't have leverage in business and life, that means that you are likely someone else's leverage. When I was working for $8.25 an hour at an assembly line, I was making toy trains. And my job consists of taking this bucket of plastic pieces, picking it up, twisting it off, putting it in these buckets. And I pick it up, twist, and I place it in the bucket. Pick, twist, place. And I just did this. That's what my whole job was in this assembly line. It was intense. But the hardest part was, I was sitting across the table from a sweet lady. Her name was Peggy. And she's been twisting plastic as her full-time job for over 40 years. And I'm 17 and I'm sitting here and I'm like, I couldn't help but to imagine myself 40 years from now twisting plastic as I'm doing this. And just the thought of it was making me feel so anxious. I'm like, ugh, it's like, I got to get out of here. And I couldn't handle it because I'm like, I don't think there's got to be more to life than twisting plastic in buckets. And I was like, there's got to be something more to this. So at that moment, I was the leverage of the one who owned the business. He was a friend of mine, so he was endeavoring to do me a favor by offering me a job, and I appreciate the gesture. I just realized, like, that was not for me. So that was harder because, like, I am his leverage, and twisting the plastic, it's going to be a minimum wage, because the problem I solve is a low leverage problem. Anyone could get in there, almost anyone, and twist plastic in buckets, so they're not willing to pay more for that. So this is the secret to growing your business quickly. It really depends on what class of impact you're going to, what level of leverage you're going to work in. And there are 4 classes of impact for the 4 classes of income. People think the secret to increasing their income is by working harder. But working harder is not really how people create income. Now, don't get me wrong. Hard work is important for our character. Hard work is good for developing these traits of perseverance and diligence, and hard work is good. And I work hard, and I encourage people to work hard, but I don't work hard for money, because that's one of the greatest lies that is being taught, is to make a lot of money, you need to work really hard. As a mechanic, there is a limit to what I'm able to earn working as a mechanic, because there are 4 classes of impact, and depending on what class that you are working in will determine your income. Like, I could tell exactly how much a person makes just by what class of impact they're working in. I'll give you an example. The lowest class of impact is what I like to call actualize. Actualize are the people who are actually carrying out the work, like the mechanic, like the assembly line, twisting the bucket, like twisting and putting in pieces. If your your work and employment is working primarily in the actualized class of impact, the lowest class of impact, that's the lowest bracket of income, you're going to be making, if you're stuck at under $100,000 a year, that's because you're working in actualize, and there you will always be limited on what you can earn. And the second lowest class of impact is going to be what I call supervise. And when you are supervising, then that is when you are a manager over the actualizers. So in management, you could be making anywhere from $60,000 to $300,000 if you're in middle management in a big corporation, but you're still going to be capped $300,000 a year of what you're able to earn, because that's the second lowest class of impact. And your income is the direct reflection of the impact that you've had in the marketplace. Income is the result of value that you've added. And how do you impact the marketplace? You do it by solving problems. I used to believe that we're getting paid by the hour, so we're getting paid for our time. You're never getting paid from your time. You're always getting paid by the impact that you have on the marketplace. So while I'm twisting pieces and putting them in buckets, the impact that I'm having in the marketplace is going to be minimum wage. It's very minimal, so my income will be minimal. But someone who does brain surgery, the impact that they're going to be doing is going to be a little higher, but it's still going to have a cap of what they're able to earn. They might make $100 an hour or somewhere around there. So, but they're not getting paid for their hours, for their time. They're getting paid by the complexity of the problem that they're solving. Thus, that's the impact that they're leaving in the marketplace. So, the second lowest class of impact is going to be supervise. And those are the two lower classes of impact. But when we start getting into the higher classes of impact, also the higher classes of income, which would you rather be working in? Do you want to be working in the lower classes, or do you want to be earning in the higher classes of income? Higher classes. So what is the difference? The second highest class of impact is what we would call vocalize. Vocalize are those who are using their mouth to make money. They're using their influence to increase their income. These are the speakers, these are authors, these are coaches, these are people who are sales professionals who work in a sales environment, learning high income skills like closing, like digital marketing, like funnel building, like skills that are teaching you how to persuade, how to sell. When you look at these people can make anywhere from $300,000 upward to, like, I have a friend who made $7 million in one day at an event that he hosted, and that is through the sales. So you look at many of the billionaires or the 100 millionaires, these people have sales experience and sales skills. That's what they use on a daily basis. So vocalizers are going to be having a higher impact in the world. So there are those who are public speakers. Warren Buffett, one of the richest men on the planet, he says, like, many times when he's interviewed, he's like, Warren, what is your favorite accomplishment you've ever done? And he's done huge acquisitions of major companies. He's done a lot of big things, but he's like, my favorite achievement is a completion of a Dale Carnegie public speaking course. Till this day, he has the certification for his public speaking course with Dale Carnegie hanging on the wall of his office. And he says, anybody, any entrepreneur, anyone in life, doesn't matter what you're doing, if there's one skill that you can learn that will get you the furthest ahead and be the highest leverage skill possible, and he says that would be public speaking. Learning how to communicate your ideas and share them in a way that people want to get behind what you stand for, this is going to make the biggest difference. Why? Because, and this is a billionaire who's explaining how vocalizing, learning to use your mouth to vocalize your message is one of the highest income skills that you can learn. What's really cool about skills is that skills There's no divorce that could take your skills away. There's no government that can take away your skills. There's no economic downturn. Once you acquire skills, they're yours for life. So it gives you the stability no matter what the economy is doing. When you learn high income skills like closing, like public speaking, like digital marketing, like sales, like coaching, then you are able to have those skills no matter what. And it gives you there's a level of job security there, and financial security. And so the second highest class of impact is vocalize, those who use their mouth to make money. And there is large ceilings, large possibilities with that. Now the highest class of impact, when the number one, this is where billionaires are made. Without exception, all the billionaires, you'll see that they all fit under the class that we would call visualize. Those who use their imagination, their intention, and their imagination to increase their income. These are the people who are like I'll give you an example. Tell me what person comes to your mind when you think of the company Apple?
Steve Jobs.
Steve Jobs. But why? Because Steve Jobs was the visionary. Steve Jobs said that those who think they are crazy enough to change the world are the ones who actually do. And it's the visionaries. He had a vision to have a personal computer. Instead, of being on the wall, taking up the size of a wall, he imagined a personal computer that could be held in your hand, or that could be at your home, or that could be your own. And so it was revolutionary, but it was an imagination. It was innovation. It was visualizing a future that is not yet. And where Steve didn't actually build the computers. He had Steve Wozniak, who was the actualizer. He's the one who put into practice and built this billion-dollar brand. Well, actually, it's a multi-trillion-dollar brand, because Steve Jobs is working in the class of visualizing. And this is the highest income skill that you can have across the board. You see from Elon Musk to Bill Gates to Warren Buffett to all these different places, they're using their minds to make more money. And when you understand that each class of impact determines your income, and the skills that you learn surrounding that are going to determine or limit your income, these are also the 4 classes of impact, are also the 4 levels of leverage. Depending on what level of leverage that you use is going to determine what level of wealth that you're able to experience. Most people think the key to getting ahead financially is working harder. The answer is not working harder, it's working higher, in a higher class of impact. And working harder does not guarantee that you'll make more money, but working harder does guarantee that it'll make you more tired. And this is the key this is a secret that most entrepreneurs don't realize. They figure this hustle that's sold to the masses as an opiate to the masses is like hustle, grind, hustle, and just work more hours. People are like, I work harder than anyone else. I work longer than anyone else. I'm the first one in and the last one out. And it's like, this stuff it just makes people real exhausted and tired. And working harder, here's the thing, working harder at a lower level of leverage does not get you financially ahead. It only makes you feel more stuck. The secret to getting ahead financially is by working at a higher level of leverage. So if there's one skill that you could master, such that by mastering would make everything else easier and necessary, I would submit to you it would be the power of leverage. Understanding what is leverage, where can you find leverage in your business, how can you use leverage in a practical daily applications, and how can you get leverage for your leverage? Because even remember that story that I shared when I was grabbing the bolts, I had a bolt that I wanted off. So did I try to pry it off with my fingers? No way, that would be some rough stuff. I wouldn't be strong enough. So I needed to get a ratchet that would be a tool that would help me to get the bolts off. But some bolts, I want more force, I want more power, I want more results in my life. So I'm going to need to get leverage for my leverage. And you can stack leverage on top of each other. And I got a big hollow pipe and I put it on there, and then pop, comes off like butter. And that if you want your life to be, if you want your business to be able to grow so much faster than you right now think possible, then the secret is going to be finding leverage for your leverage. And as you stack leverage on top of leverage, whether it's a high income skill, whether it's a tool, whether it's a resource or a mentor or other people's times, the more leverage you stack on each other, eventually you will have a mountain of leverage. And when you have that mountain, you're able to move the world. Archimedes even said, he said, give me a lever long enough and a point to place it upon, a fulcrum to put it on, and I will move the world. That's the power that we have. You're always limited by your own resources, your own time, your own ability, your own knowledge, your own skill. But anything that you lack in skill, you can always make up in leverage. So I'll give an example. When I first started speaking and creating content back in 2012, so I've been going at this for about 10 years now, and I was creating videos, and I was getting to a point where at first I had no leverage, and that's in startups you're always not going to have leverage. Where if I needed a website, I would build a website. If I needed to edit videos, I would edit the videos. If I needed to speak, I would speak. I would study the messages, I would speak. If I needed a cameraman, sometimes I would hit record and like walk it in front, and then I'd start speaking. And everything. I did everything in the beginning, and I had zero leverage. So what did that get me? Tired. And then it wasn't until my mom, she came to me and she's like, Enoch, you're working too hard. It's like, to do what you're doing, you're going to need a team. You're going to need to outsource and bring people together. And at first I'm like, why would anybody want to work with me? Like, that doesn't make sense. Or it's like, I don't have anyone who wants to help. And it was interesting. It was like a Jethro experience, because in Exodus 18, Moses was answering all these things. He was leading over 1 million people that are coming out of Egypt and in this Exodus. And then Jethro's like, look, Moses, you're going to wear yourself out. You have too much responsibility on your shoulders. You need to delegate. And Jethro was explaining a process where you have captains over 10s and over 50s and over hundreds and over thousands. And then the small matters they'll be able to handle. And then as it gets increasingly more like responsible, then it's going to eventually go to Moses, but Moses is going to answer everything. He's going to build a team so he doesn't die early. And I was like, okay, that sounds good in theory, but how does that work? And what we ended up doing, what I realized is one of the areas in the business that I liked the least was editing videos. Like, I couldn't stand editing videos. It got to a point where I'm like, okay, if I'm going to have to, the more videos that I record means the more videos I have to edit. So that means I don't want to record videos. But there's a problem with that. I'm on a mission. I'm on a mission to impact hundreds of thousands and millions of people's lives, and I'm not going to be able to do that without recording videos. So but if my weakness in video editing is so strong that it's going to hinder me from doing my calling that I love so much, which is communicating and teaching and sharing, then we've got an issue, right? Houston, we have a problem. So one of the first roles that I've leveraged out in our business is video editing. I realized that's not a skill that I do best in. So finding someone who can help edit those videos. And that was leverage. And I've worked with multiple video editors at that time, but I started to develop a team. So since 2014, I've been blessed to be able to have a team. There's I haven't been a solopreneur since then. Every day in many ways, I've had a team to be able to help, to be able to grow what's been going, grow the mission that we've been on ever since. So I've had to learn, in order to tap into other people's time, there's a few set of skills that need to be required. It needs to be skills of delegation, skills of communicating expectations, skills of rewarding for good behavior, rewarding for the skills, and there's leadership skills that need to be developed. So leadership, this is the skill of influence. Nothing more, nothing less. And what I've found is that leadership or influence is not only a talent that God has given to all of us, but the question is whether you cultivate it. Influence is a skill that has infinite potential. There's no limit to what you can accomplish when you learn to leverage or influence other people's resources to accomplish a common goal. So because of that, I decided back in like 2016, I'm going to dedicate my life in mastering the skill of influence. Anything that I can learn about influence, sales, persuasion, leadership, delegation, anything that I can learn about leadership, I will be a lifelong learner of leadership. And it fascinates me how many solopreneurs or how many entrepreneurs are tired and they're exhausted, and they see that what they're doing is not working, and yet they think that the answer to change their situation is do more of what's not working. It's like, does that make sense? No, the answer is to do something different, to work at a higher level of leverage, and you do that by acquiring a new skill. And I've done that by acquiring the skill of leadership. That has allowed me to tap in to build a team, to be able to find and attract other leaders. And then I've found that me learning to lead is one level of leadership, but the next tier is me learning to lead leaders, me learning to develop leaders, to cultivate leaders. I'm like, oh, that creates another layer of leverage. That creates another layer of multiplication, because now I'm multiplying the influence in the organization that we're able to grow. That was a new level for me. There was a quote that I read that transformed my life. It'll never be the same again. And it said, and this is when I was tired, I was doing everything myself, and I'm like, who would ever want to work with me? I'm like, why would they? And then I was reading, and it said, the wisest generalship is in seeing not how much he can do himself, but in how much he can lead the people to do. I'm like, man, I'm not being a wise general. The biggest question on my life was, how can I do more? How can I, see that, do more? Lousy question. And if I'm asking a lousy question, I'm going to get a lousy what? Answer. So I just found out more ways to pile more on my plate. But what's the problem with that? I am extremely limited by my time. We only have 24 hours in a day. So there's only so much I could fit in one day. So the answer is to not say no to those projects, but it's to say yes through other people's resources, other people's knowledge, other people's skills, other people's time. And by doing that, there's no limits. The only limit to the potential is my experience, my skill of influence. So I'm like, okay, let me change my question. How much can I lead the people to do? Ooh, now that creates a new set of skills. Now I've bumped up to supervise back in 2014. That's a higher level of leverage, higher class of impact. So it's going to change the impact and income that I'm able to have. So as you level up, and then I realized like, okay, there's at first I was teaching people one-on-one, or I was teaching people in a classroom. And when you start teaching in a classroom, like you could teach a handful of people, and that's great. And then I started to record some of those lessons as I was teaching. When I first got started, I was teaching a lot of digital marketing for nonprofits. Then I started teaching a lot of health messages, started a health food business, and that really took off. And then since 2017, I've been teaching, helping entrepreneurs to be able to grow their business online and support themselves in following their mission. Where what I learned is like by teaching 101, like I'm extremely limited. At one point I was just like, how can I do more lessons 101 and coaching people in that regard? I'm like, this 101 coaching was like I would have like 5 to 7 a day, and they were back to back to back. And I was just thinking like, how could I fit more? How could I fit more? But then it was brought to my attention, well, what if you do a group coaching? I was like, okay, group coaching. It was about 2014. Then I started bringing people together, and now I'm teaching in a group. I'm like, wow, there's a lot more leverage here. So you see how I could scale that impact. And I would even say that group coaching is more valuable than one-on-one coaching, because in a group, people are asking questions that you wouldn't even think to ask. But when you hear the answer, you're like, whoa, I needed that. That is so important. And when you really look at it, about 80% of what you're going to teach to each person is going to be the same. You have this same framework, the same process, the same basic advice that you're going to give people no matter where they're at. So rather than doing for your time and theirs, like doing one-on-one and one, teaching the exact same thing. Like there's been times I get off the call, I'm teaching the same thing to person one, same thing to person two, same thing. And then people are like, wow, this is mind-blowing, this is powerful, this is amazing. And in my mind, I'm like, this is my third time I've explained this today. But what if you just get those people together in a group and in the 80% that's all the same, just share it all at the same time. It maximizes your time, which is the most scarcest limited resource that you possibly have. And out of everything you could leverage, learn to leverage your time. And it's better for them because now some people are willing to ask questions that you have, but you wouldn't ask. Like for me, I'm known in multiple circles. Like when I went to Funnel Hacking Live, I was walking in the hallways and I've got stopped by like 4 or 5 people we were in similar coaching programs or masterminds, and they're like, Enoch! And I was like, hey, where do we know each other? It's like, oh, we're in like Myron's mastermind. You're the guy who asks great questions. I'm like, oh, okay. Or people are like, oh, I've been wanting to introduce myself to you. You ask such great questions. And so that's one of the things that people remember me by. And I learned how to ask great questions from my mom. She was the first mentor who taught me the curiosity and cultivated that as a child. And I realized, like, sitting in class, that was something I didn't get. Like in school, I found that like my neighbor had this question, I had this question, this person had the same question, and like 5 people in the class had the same question, but nobody wanted to ask. I'm like, why don't you guys want to ask? They were afraid to feel stupid. They were afraid to speak up, or maybe they're like, have an identity where I'm a quiet person. I don't ask questions. It's their identity. And whatever the case is, I'm like, you all have the same question. So I'm like, I'll do it. And I raise my hand. I'm like, teacher, it's like, what's going on with this? And then everyone's like, oh, thank you so much. We were wondering the same thing. I'm like, why don't you just ask it? Jesus says you have not because you ask not in James. And so and that's why in a group, if you're a student who's attending a group coaching, you are leveraging other people's questions. You are outsourcing your weakness and you're leveraging someone else's strength, and you're gaining from them. So that is an example. So it freed up way more of my time. Now instead of doing 5 to 7 one-on-ones back to back, I could have 5 to 7 people in a group and let that grow. Then it's like, wow, that just freed up a lot of my time. So what do I do with that? Now I reallocate my time to more high leverage things that's going to multiply impact, multiply income, and multiply my time. So what's really powerful, like incredibly powerful, I didn't just add another 6-7 hours a day. I multiplied that, because you take like 7 hours that was added to my life 7 days a week. That's 49 hours in a week, and that's like 200 hours in a month. And very quickly you see that it is a time multiplier, and it compounds when you make one subtle shift. That one shift from doing one-on-one coaching to group coaching has allowed a multiplication. And if you look at the impact of what that was from 2014 to 2022 today, and all the hundreds, maybe thousands of hours that I've gotten back in my life because of just one lever that I was able to pull from one-to-one coaching to group coaching. It's incredible the amount of lifestyle, the travel, the education, the training, the growth, the focus, planning that I'm able to reallocate and reinvest into other endeavors. And the same thing for you. I'm here to tell you that the secret to growing your business fast is not by working harder at what is not working, but it's by learning higher leverage skills. And one of the fastest ways, would you like to know what's one of the fastest paths to developing any skill?
Yes.
Here's the key. The difference between where you are now and where you want to be is the same difference between what skills you know now and the skills you don't know yet. And what can bridge the gap quickly is having a mentor. A mentor is one of the fastest bridge between where you are and where you want to be. Where without the mentor creating a bridge for you to cross that chasm, most people try to figure it out on their own, and they go off the cliff, they go down into this mire and muck and all these thorns and briars, and they're just like, then they start trying to scale the wall and they're trying to figure it out the hard way. This is what learning from your own mistakes looks like. And you're going up and then finally you get across. But at what cost? Like, it was free, but what did it cost you? It cost you time. It cost you emotional energy. It cost you all the failures and disappointment. It cost you the ignorance, and learning things your own way is costing a fortune. Why? Because that's the lower level of leverage. That's not leveraging other people's time, other people's knowledge, other people's experience. Why learn from your own mistakes when you can just find someone who has the results that you want? Find a mentor, pay them whatever they charge to find out what they did. If they've already crossed the chasm and they've built a bridge, that bridge representing a framework, a step-by-step process that you can leverage other people's framework, and they're just like, look, for $500 you could have my course, and I'll walk you through the process of exactly, so you don't have to learn the hard way, you can learn the fast way. So here's the thing, a mentor is one of the highest forms of leverage you could possibly get. This is why I wrote my book, I Want a Mentor, Now What Do I Do? Because when I say in this book, it teaches you how to meet master mentors, how to maximize your mentorships. That's literally taking what are the books, the seminars, the courses, the masterminds, the coaching programs, what are the things you've already invested in, and how would you like to multiply the effectiveness of that? Learning how to maximize those mentorships. And with the right framework, you're able to multiply the effectiveness because it's teaching high leverage lessons to get the most out of your mentorship. And then finally, it shows you how to master any skill in half the time by having the right mentor. Because when you learn to leverage, and you apply leverage even to your learning, when you apply leverage and you become a super student of successful people, and then there's the speed of which you're able to acquire new skills is incredible. So in other words, like there's the verse in Ephesians chapter 6 and verse, actually it's Ephesians 5:16, it says, redeeming the time. Why? Because the days are evil. And that word redeeming is very interesting because redeeming, the definition here is redeeming means to buy back, to purchase back, to rescue from loss, and to improve the use of. So when Paul here is saying redeeming the time, he's literally saying God wants us to buy back our time, to purchase back our time, and to rescue our time from loss. Because the days are evil. And that word evil doesn't mean like sinful. It means hard or difficult, troublous, and challenging. So one of the reasons why you want to redeem and buy back your time and find whatever ways you can buy back your time is because being an entrepreneur is hard. It's difficult. You're going to face difficulties and challenges. But a way for you to maximize that is by finding ways to purchase back your time. How do you buy back your time? It's interesting. I would submit to you that if you could buy back your time, that means that time is infinitely more valuable than money. Because if you think about it, money you spend, like you spend money on a book and you're going to get that money back. It comes and goes. But when you spend your time squandered can never be gathered again. When you use your time on low leverage activities, then that time is lost. that you're never able to gather. If you are sitting, like another example, if you're sitting, so many people, they're sitting on their deathbed. If you have like a terminal illness and you're at the brink of death and you've acquired all this wealth, which would you rather have? Would you rather have more time, or would you rather have more money while you're sitting at your deathbed?
Time.
More time. People intrinsically already know that time is worth infinitely more value than money. But it seems that when we work on projects, when we say yes to things, and when we prioritize our life and we make decisions of the day, it's almost as though we think that money is worth more than our time. But that's not the case. Learning to work at higher levels of leverage helps you to buy back your time. For instance, anytime that I want to gain a skill, like let's say public speaking. In speaking, I've had multiple mentors who have been speaker trainers. I've attended seminars that help me to be a better speaker. I've read books that help me be a better speaker. I've paid $1,000 for courses. I've paid $50,000 for courses, training that's going to help me to improve my speaking skills. And I know that anytime that you invest in a mentor to help you to develop a skill, you are literally and effectively buying back your time. You are redeeming your time, learning from other people's mistakes rather than your own. You're actually buying it at a discount. So that's why I find mentorship is so valuable, because that's one of the ways, if you want to learn a high-income skill, find someone who has that high-income skill and go learn what they did and understand the process. And when you learn that process, you're going to find that your business grows faster than ever before. Learn to differentiate. And it's like, look for high leverage things. Would you like a really quick tip, very valuable tip for prioritizing your time?
Yes.
A lot of times we have things that are competing for attention. We have distractions everywhere. And it's almost as though when you make an effort to do something, there's so many opportunities that pop up. You're like, where did all these come from? It wasn't there before I had a plan. And now all these opportunities are here. So one thing that I do, and it's so helpful, I learned it from Michael Hyatt, he's one of my leadership mentors. And this is a question that I ask every time when there's conflicting opportunities, or when I'm planning on doing something and something else conflicts, and I'm like, uh-oh, how do I know what to choose? Ask this question. You can write it down. What option will be the highest leverage? What is the highest leverage? Or in other words, the highest consequences? I learned from Brian Tracy, who's also a leadership and sales coach. He said something I'll never forget. I was learning this book on goal setting, and he said that the most successful leaders make their decisions based on consequences. And whatever has the highest consequences or the highest leverage, that's what they do. I was like, wow. And he explains, he went similar through like how I took you through the highest class of impact, those 4 classes of impact. He showed that there was different consequences. But the one thing that has the highest consequence, the highest leverage, is using your mind and your imagination. Visualizing a future that is not yet. Working on yourself. Investing in your mind, which is the greatest asset that you will ever have. Skilling up. Learning these skills that will help you to go further faster. And what's powerful is that your ability to visualize is infinite. And it has the highest consequences. So it's just, there's no limit to what you could accomplish. And when I learned that, I'm like, okay. And I started to adopt that into my everyday life. I just went through life and I filtered like, what will be the highest leverage? What option will be the highest consequences? When I did that, decision making became easy. Now I love making tough decisions quickly because it's as simple as what will have the highest consequences. If it gets done, if it doesn't get done, if we do it, if we don't, and the projects we say yes to, and it smooths the way. There's a really powerful verse that I just love this verse, and it's in Ecclesiastes 10. And in Ecclesiastes 10, it talks about 10:10, 10 verse 10, it says, if the iron be blunt, so it's talking about an axe. If in Ecclesiastes 10:10, if the iron be blunt and he do not sharpen the edge, then must he put to more strength, but wisdom is profitable to direct. There's so much here. He's basically saying that if your axe is blunt and you don't sharpen the axe, then you're going to have to put more strength, right? And remember in the beginning, I defined leverage is anything that multiplies strength, multiplies force, multiplies your might, right? Leverage is a multiplier. And you put in little time and it multiplies your time. Put in little strength and it multiplies your strength. So imagine, like, no leverage would be you trying to chop down a tree using your bare hands, right? That would be some rough stuff. You're not going to find me doing that. And I used to do logging, and I used to chop down trees. We'd bring our firewood, and I had a lot of my early mentors. They were loggers, and that's what they did. So that's what we went out and we did. So you could chop down a tree with an axe, and an axe is going to be a tool. That is the next level of leverage. It's in an axe in the woods. It's a ratchet in the mechanic shop. It's whatever tool you might use, and or it could be a software in an online business, whether it's a web building tool. That is a tool of leverage. When I had to learn to build websites in high school, they were doing like HTML code stuff, and I'm like pulling out my hair. And at the end of that class, learning all the HTML and CSS, and like it was going over my head. I'm like, I thought I needed a website, but I think I realized this isn't gonna work. Like, I don't think I'll ever have a website. And then I had this geeky friend who's like, oh, don't build one from scratch. There's this thing called WordPress. Here, come check this out. And I'm like, WordPress, what's that? He's like, yeah, it's a content management system. I'm like, CMS, what's that? And he just showed me. It's like, you don't need to know all that coding. You can just build a website and pop, there it is. And I was like, oh, God, I think I could have a website again. And I was like, I'm ready to go. And so that's how the website was built. So that is a higher tool of leverage. Now I don't use WordPress, I use ClickFunnels. ClickFunnels is incredible for entrepreneurs, love it. So you have an axe, but how would you like to work? Like if you wanted to chop down 100 trees, would you want to do it with a dull axe or with a sharp axe? A sharp axe. If it's dull, you have it working harder at a lower level of leverage doesn't help you to produce more results. It only makes you tired. So it doesn't make you more money, it just makes you more tired. So you sharpen the axe. And there's even a whole chapter in the book, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey. It's amazing. I believe the 7th habit was to sharpen your saw. And he used this analogy. I like sharpen your axe because it's scriptural. But it's this principle of sharpening the axe. It means skilling up, taking a moment. Like if you have 100 trees to chop and you might think you're going to waste time by sitting down and sharpening the blade and getting it sharper. But in reality, you'll actually chop more trees down by sitting down and sharpening the edge than you would if you just do it all nonstop with a dull blade. And what that looks like in our life is sometimes you have to slow down so you can go faster. And you have to slow down enough and invest your time in new learnings. When you're listening to this Momentum Masterclass, when you're listening to, when you're getting mentorship, when you are being coached, when you're attending a seminar, these are all examples of skilling up, of sharpening your axe, because you are acquiring skills, you're strengthening skills, so that skill is going to help you, like a sharp axe, to pierce through the results and split things more and get more results that you're looking for. It's a higher form of leverage. So that's an example of sharpening the axe. So that's one level of leverage. Now I want you to imagine you're trying to chop down 100 trees, and you have and instead of an axe, you got a chainsaw. Now you have an engine. Now you have a machine. A machine is a higher level of leverage. Now you can cut down some trees, and going through 100 trees is going to be a lot easier. It's a higher level of leverage. Now imagine that you have it's not just you, but it's you and another person, another logger, each with a chainsaw. Now you're able to do even more, right? It's a higher level of leverage. Now you've just multiplied your time by leveraging other people's time. Now I want you to imagine the fifth level of leverage here is you, and you have you and your friends. You don't have a chainsaw, you have a logging tractor. And this tractor is specifically designed for logging. Now you're going to be able to blast through 100 trees pretty quickly, right? Because you have a higher form of leverage. And it takes a lot less physical strength because you're able to move the levers and cut through the trees. Now I want you to imagine two people with logging tractors that you have hired to chop down 100 trees. So you see, that's a little different, right? And think about how much strength and how much skill does it require for you to have, like how much strength and logging skill does it require for you to hire two people with tractors that cut down 100 trees? Zero. So some of the stuff that you may be working, what does this mean to you in your business? Some of the stuff you may be working on in your business require zero skill and zero effort. They don't even require your time. If you find the right who, and you find the person who's able to do that so much better, that it's their passion, it's their joy. You know, it took me, I was involving people to edit my videos for maybe like 3-4 years before it actually settled in my mind why anybody on planet Earth would ever enjoy editing videos. And I remember working with this one guy, and he would edit my videos, and he would just he did a great job. And I would constantly give him suggestions that would require less editing and ways he could save time on editing. And he would just do some more complex things in editing. And I'm like, what is going on? And he told me 3 times, well, I like editing. But I'm like, I just brushed it off nah, it's people don't like editing. So why would anyone like editing? And it took me a while before it finally settled in. I'm like, whoa, he actually likes editing. That's something he enjoys. And here's the thing that I learned from that. In business, if you want to grow faster, you want to surround yourself with people who love what you hate, who are strong where you are weak. Surround yourself with people who play at the things that just drain and exhaust you, and they just find it's playful and enjoyable, and they just love doing it. Surround yourself with people that are different than you, and you will find that your business will go further faster when you do this. And it's through the power of leverage. This is the lesson that all of the most successful entrepreneurs, the wealthiest people on the planet, they are tapping into leverage. You could see your income is a direct relation to what level of leverage you are tapping into. Whether you're in actualize, whether you're in supervise, if you're vocalize or visualize, it will determine how much you're able to earn. You're always going to be limited if you do more at lower levels. And the hardest, I will tell you, the hardest work that you will possibly do as an entrepreneur, that's going to be the highest leverage, is to think. But so many people will choose rather to be physically diligent so they can remain mentally lazy. And until we learn to flip the script and learn how to, working hard is good for our character, but it's not going to get you further in your business. Learn to work at higher leverage. Learn to tap into leverage. Look at life through the lens of leverage, and you'll be able to live large. You'll be able to live a life of impact and greater possibilities, greater options. You'll be able to bless so many more people with your solutions and your message. And there's so much more. And if you like to learn more about how you could tap into leveraging mentors, I recommend getting a copy of the book, I Want a Mentor, Now What Do I Do? You can grab a copy at iwantamentorbook.com. from there, you just tell me where to send it. I'd love to send you a free few chapters of the book, and you can get this today at iwantamentorbook.com. And I'm going to be doing a series on leverage. I'm going to be going through a little bit more on showing you practical lessons that how you as an author, a coach, a speaker, or other high-level entrepreneur, how you can apply greater leverage in your business and find results that you never even thought possible. I'm really going to be uncovering, like pulling back the curtain, so to speak, on conversations that are usually kept behind closed doors at high-level masterminds that wealthy entrepreneurs discuss, and we share with each other these principles. It's like this is the conversation we're having that usually isn't spoken of very much in public. But I'm going to be sharing with you the lessons that makes the real difference between struggling entrepreneurs and successful entrepreneurs. So stay tuned, and I'll have more for you shortly. And remember, friends, that God doesn't call the qualified, He qualifies the called.